Do you live in the United States? Then stop what you're doing and listen carefully. New Jersey has just 2 days' worth of cash in reserve. That means if tax revenue dries up, the entire state government runs out of money in 48 hours. In California, over 4,000 homes were foreclosed in a single month, a wave we haven't seen in years. And in Florida, 9 different cities have now landed on the national list of the most inflated real estate bubbles, with prices dropping fast. In the next 3 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the 10 U.S. states unraveling the fastest as the country edges closer to a recession. You'll find out which cities to avoid right now, where home values are falling by 30 to 40%, and how smart investors are already shifting their money to shield themselves from the storm. This isn't theory. This isn't a forecast. These are hard facts, backed by recent reports from Moody's, Atom Data, and other major financial firms. You can either watch this now or risk watching your own financial stability crumble along with these 10 states. Number 10, Washington. When the tech-fueled dream turns into a financial disaster. You thought living in a booming tech hub meant job security and rising property values. Time to think again. Washington State, once the poster child of prosperity with companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Boeing leading the way, is now ground zero for a dangerous mix of housing volatility and mass layoffs. Here's what's really happening. Between 2022 and 2025, tens of thousands of tech jobs vanished. In Seattle, Redmond, and beyond, Amazon slashed headcount, Microsoft restructured, and even Boeing, the cornerstone of American aerospace, tightened its workforce. The unemployment rate in the greater Seattle area crept up from 3.6% to 4.5%. That might not sound catastrophic, but in a region where homes cost over $1 million and mortgages rely on dual six-figure incomes, even a small dip in earnings is enough to push families to the edge. Seattle's home prices exploded nearly 200% over the last decade. But starting in 2024, the climb turned into a cliff. Interest rates shot up, buyer demand dropped like a rock, and prices in areas like Bellevue and Kirkland are now down 12 to 15% from their peaks. If you bought recently, you might already be underwater. Worse still, foreclosures are rising. In just the first half of 2025, foreclosure filings in Washington jumped 27% compared to the previous year. That's not just a correction, it's a red flag. And it's not just homeowners hurting. The state itself is vulnerable. Washington has no income tax and leans heavily on sales and consumption taxes. As consumer spending falls and layoffs mount, state revenue is dropping fast. The rainy day fund? It might not last another year if the downturn continues. Take Ken, a 38-year-old software engineer from Redmond, laid off from Microsoft in late 2023. His wife, who worked at an AI startup, lost her job too. They're trying to hang on to their home, but each month is a tighter squeeze, with rising interest rates and fewer job prospects clouding their future. So, here's the bottom line. Washington isn't bulletproof anymore. If you live there, it's time to reduce debt, increase savings, and sharpen your skills. And if you're investing, brace for a potential 15 to 25% drop in property values and a credit market that could freeze up without warning. Washington once looked rock solid. Now, those very same foundations, tech jobs, rapid growth, high equity, are showing serious cracks. Don't ignore the signs. Prepare now while you still can. Number 9, Wyoming. When the black gold boom fades, what's left behind? Back in March 2016, over 500 miners in Wyoming's Powder River Basin, the beating heart of America's coal industry, were handed pink slips in a single day. Families were blindsided, local economies rattled, and the state took a serious hit. That wasn't just a freak event, it was a preview of what's coming. Fast forward to 2025, and Wyoming is once again walking a financial tightrope. Yes, the state might be known for its wide-open spaces and stunning natural beauty, but behind that peaceful backdrop is an economy heavily dependent on fossil fuels and dangerously exposed. Roughly 15% of Wyoming's GDP comes directly from coal, oil, and natural gas. That's a larger share than anywhere else in the country. So when global energy markets dip or clean energy pushes forward, Wyoming doesn't just slow down, it stumbles hard. In 2024 alone, coal output dropped by 10%. 3 of the state's major mines closed their gates for good. And while the official unemployment rate might still be below 4%, jobs in the energy sector are quietly disappearing one by one. It's not just about paychecks. Entire communities are hollowing out. Towns like Gillette, once thriving as coal capitals, now feel like ghost towns, vacant homes, shuttered stores, and schools facing declining enrollment. Even the state's once praised oil and gas trust funds are feeling the strain. For the past few years, Wyoming has dipped into those reserves to patch budget shortfalls. But the problem is, revenues from the resource sector are unpredictable. And with such a small population base, there's not much else to lean on. By mid-2025, Wyoming's budget hole had grown by nearly $400 million. Without help, the state may be forced to slash funding for public education, healthcare, and essential services by as much as 15%. The real estate market isn't immune either. What used to be an affordable escape for transplants from Colorado and California is now slowing down. Home prices are flatlining, while mortgage debt is on the rise. If job losses continue in the resource sector, defaults could spike, especially in smaller towns. The bigger picture doesn't look much better. Wyoming's economy is projected to shrink by 1.3% this year, the steepest decline in the entire Mountain West. Bill, a longtime miner from Casper, put it bluntly. "I survived the crash in 2016 and thought that was rock bottom. But this time it feels worse. I don't know if we'll make it out." So here's the takeaway. If you live in Wyoming, don't assume the energy boom will bounce back. Build a financial cushion, have 6-12 months of living expenses ready, and keep your eye on the housing market. It could shift fast. For investors, Wyoming might promise high returns, but never forget, it comes with equally high risk. Because when fossil fuel fortunes fade, there's no safety net unless you've prepared in advance. Subscribe now, because the next video will break down the exact moves you can make to protect your finances before the full force of this recession sets in. Number 8. Rhode Island. When America's tiniest state takes one of the biggest economic hits. It's the middle of July 2025. The peak of what should be a booming summer season. But instead of packed sidewalks and long lines outside seaside restaurants, downtown Newport looks eerily still. Rows of shops are shuttered. For lease signs hang in windows that once held lively displays, and longtime restaurant owners, many have simply disappeared. Maria, who ran a family seafood spot for over 15 years, stood at the edge of the boardwalk, staring at the waves. "This summer," she said, "no customers, no cash flow. I'm drowning just trying to keep my family's business alive." Rhode Island may be the smallest state in the nation, but when the economy falters, its fall is fast and brutal. Why? Because it leans heavily on just a handful of fragile sectors: tourism, restaurants, and education. If the national economy even catches a cold, Rhode Island ends up in the ICU. This year, spending from tourists has dried up, fewer students are enrolling, and residents, feeling the pinch, are skipping local businesses for cheaper online options. All of this hits the state's revenue like a gut punch, and there's little cushion to absorb it. The housing market, that's another storm entirely. Over the past 3 years, home values in Rhode Island jumped more than 35%. Families scrambled to buy before prices rose further, many stretching their budgets and borrowing to the max. Now interest rates have spiked, job security is weakened, and rental demand is slowing. That's a recipe for panic. Condos that once seemed like golden investments are sitting on the market for weeks. For sale signs multiply, prices are being slashed repeatedly, and because Rhode Island is a small market, once confidence starts to crack, the collapse happens faster than in larger, more stable regions. And here's the harshest part. There's no financial safety net big enough to save it. As consumer spending drops and tourism revenue vanishes, the state is being forced to tighten its belt. Public school budgets are getting cut, hospitals are scaling back services, and programs meant to help struggling families are being delayed, reduced, or canceled entirely. For a state with one of the oldest populations in the U.S., these cuts aren't just inconvenient, they're dangerous. Rhode Island's economy rests on 3 shaky pillars: an undiversified job market, a heavy dependence on volatile sectors, and a lack of strong financial reserves. Together, those make the state one of the first to feel the pressure of any national downturn. And here's the truly unsettling part: many people still don't see the warning signs. They're going about their lives unaware that the economic ice under their feet is cracking quietly, spreading wider each day. If you live in Rhode Island or are thinking of investing there, this is your wake-up call. Pay attention to the trends, be cautious with your money, and remember, small states fall fast. Number 7. Maryland. The hidden fragility of America's federal engine. In October 2023, Stephen and his wife, both proud federal workers, found themselves in a nightmare they never saw coming. A sudden government shutdown put them on unpaid leave. And just like that, the life they were building began to unravel. They had just placed a down payment on a home in the Maryland suburbs, trusting that their secure government jobs meant they were financially bulletproof. But within 3 months, their savings were wiped out, their mortgage fell through, the dream slipped away. And Stephen's story isn't an isolated case. It's a snapshot of a larger, more troubling reality. Maryland is far more fragile than it seems. On paper, Maryland looks stable. It's closely tied to Washington, D.C., and home to thousands of federal workers. defense contractors, and government-related employees. But that very closeness is what puts the state at enormous risk. Maryland's economy is deeply intertwined with federal dollars. So when Washington sneezes through a shutdown, budget cut, or policy delay, Maryland catches the full-blown flu. In fact, credit agencies are starting to take notice. Moody's recently downgraded Maryland's rating, citing slow economic recovery and weaker fiscal health compared to other states. It's a clear warning sign that cracks are forming beneath the surface. One of the biggest issues, Maryland's fixed costs are massive. From state-funded pensions to public health programs, much of the budget is already spoken for. When a downturn hits, there's very little wiggle room to adapt or reduce spending. In 2024, Maryland faced a staggering $3.3 billion budget gap. Leaders scrambled to stay afloat, raising taxes, slashing public spending, and draining emergency reserves. But how long can a state patch holes before the entire system gives out? Then there's the housing market. Over the past decade, home prices in the D.C. metro area have skyrocketed, driven largely by public sector workers on stable incomes. But that stability now looks fragile. If paychecks slow or job cuts hit federal employees, it could trigger a domino effect, homes hitting the market in panic, values dropping, and foreclosures following close behind. Maryland wasn't a speculative housing market like others, but it's brittle. It's built on the assumption of steady government funding and reliable jobs. Remove those supports, even temporarily, and the whole structure starts to wobble. What's ironic is that Maryland was once seen as a beacon of security. Now that same dependency on federal stability is what makes it so vulnerable. If you're living in Maryland or working in the public sector, now is the time to prepare. Brace for potential salary reductions, possible job disruptions, rising costs of living, and a housing market correction. Don't make the same mistake Stephen did, assuming a safe job means you're untouchable. One shutdown proved otherwise. Share this video with friends and family in Maryland. Being informed today could mean avoiding a crisis tomorrow. And don't forget to subscribe to stay ahead of what's coming next, because more states are starting to show cracks. Number 6. Oregon. The land of green ideals is now showing signs of financial strain. Oregon has long carried a reputation for being one of the most naturally blessed and environmentally conscious states in the country. Towering forests, crystal-clear rivers, fertile farmland, and Portland's once iconic identity as a hub for creativity, freedom, and sustainability. It all felt like a dream come to life. But that green dream is fading fast. If you still believe a place as peaceful and progressive as Oregon is immune to economic trouble, you may not be seeing what's really happening beneath the surface. For years, Oregon's economy raced ahead, largely thanks to its booming export sector. In 2024 alone, it shipped out more than $34 billion in goods. But here's the catch. It's heavily reliant on international trade partners like China, Canada, and Mexico. And when global trade slows down, Oregon doesn't just stumble, it grinds to a halt. Manufacturing orders are drying up, the Port of Portland has grown unusually quiet, and local farmers are being left with full harvests they can't move while their costs continue climbing. The global slowdown is turning into a local crisis, and that's just the economic front. Oregon's most critical industries, forestry, agriculture, and tourism all depend on nature's cooperation. But wildfires, droughts, and dwindling water sources are taking a toll. The very environment that defined Oregon's identity is now under siege from a changing climate. Here's the cruel twist. During economic downturns, budgets for environmental protection are often the first to get slashed. So when Oregon needs help the most, protecting forests, managing fires, preserving water, it may be left to fend for itself. Some might point to the tech sector as a potential lifeline, but that hope is dimming too. Intel, once the crown jewel of Oregon's tech industry, has begun trimming jobs, and Portland's once vibrant startup culture is losing steam, with many young professionals packing up and moving elsewhere. Job growth in the state has been flat since mid-2025, and according to Moody's, Oregon is either already in a recession or sitting on the edge of one. The housing market isn't offering much relief either. During the pandemic and years that followed, Portland saw a massive surge in home prices, but now that same boom is becoming a bust. Homeowners who bought with high leverage are now staring down falling prices, rising interest rates, and uncertain job prospects. A correction is already underway, and then there's the state budget. Oregon famously has no sales tax. That sounds like a win for consumers, but it leaves the government heavily dependent on personal income taxes. When people lose jobs or face pay cuts, the state's revenue dries up almost instantly. There's no financial safety net here, no cushion to absorb the impact of a downturn. When the money stops flowing, the collapse comes hard and fast. So if you live in Oregon or own property there, now is not the time to get comfortable. Don't let the natural beauty fool you into thinking everything is fine. The state still has stunning landscapes and a spirit of innovation, but neither of those things can pay your mortgage or keep government services running in a crisis. The green dream is cracking, and only those who are paying attention and planning ahead will weather the storm. Know someone who calls Oregon home? Send this to them. It's not about fear, it's about awareness. Because when the next state on this list is revealed, it might hit even closer to home. And if you want to stay ahead of what's coming and where the smart money is going, don't forget to subscribe. Number 5. Connecticut. A state once admired for precision and prosperity is now showing serious cracks. Connecticut used to be thought of as America's polished Swiss watch, a compact, efficient state fueled by wealth, finance, and long-standing institutions. But in 2025, that same reputation is working against it. Why? Because what was once seen as a finely tuned system is now more like a machine with no flexibility, one that can't handle the strain of a real downturn. This small New England state is heavily reliant on high earners, especially those working in finance and tied to Wall Street. When markets are booming, that's a good thing. But when things turn south, as they are right now, it quickly becomes a major liability. Connecticut's budget is weighed down by unavoidable expenses, massive public debt, long-term pension obligations, and legally locked-in entitlement programs. These aren't optional costs. They keep coming, even when tax revenue slows to a crawl. So what happens when the wealthy pull back or move out? The state is backed into a corner. Officials are forced to consider unpleasant options, cut essential services, borrow more money, or hike taxes even further. And that's exactly the situation unfolding now. Despite a moment of recovery in 2024, credit analysts at Moody's still place Connecticut in the high-risk category for 2025. The reason its financial structure is brittle and extremely vulnerable during periods of economic stress. Just ask Mark, a former banker from Hartford. "I stuck around because I love this place," he said, "but most of my friends packed up for Florida to escape the taxes. Even my son had to leave. There just aren't enough opportunities here anymore." Connecticut's housing market isn't offering any relief either. Between some of the highest property taxes in the country and the real possibility of even more tax hikes to plug future budget shortfalls, demand is fading. Buyers are cautious, prices are softening, and investors are pulling back. For residents, it means living under a growing cloud of financial uncertainty. For those thinking about investing, the risks are mounting, especially over the next 12 to 18 months. If you call Connecticut home, or if you're considering putting your money there, now's the time to get proactive. Start diversifying your assets, reduce exposure where possible, and prepare for the possibility of higher taxes and service cuts in the months ahead. And most importantly, share this segment with someone you know who lives in Connecticut. One warning could save them tens of thousands of dollars. Stay informed, stay prepared. Because the next state on this list is even more fragile than it looks. Number 4, New Jersey. When wealth becomes a weight, not a shield. Squeezed between two of the nation's biggest financial powerhouses, New York City and Philadelphia, New Jersey once represented comfort, status, and opportunity for the upper middle class. But now in 2025, that vision has started to crack. The cost of living in the Garden State is no longer just high, it's suffocating. New Jersey continues to lead the nation with the highest property tax rate, currently averaging 2.1% annually. For retirees and seniors on a fixed income, that's not just inconvenient, it can wipe out several months of their pension in one bill. And that's before factoring in income taxes, business taxes, and the daily expenses of living in one of the most expensive regions in the country. What's worse, when a recession hits as it's doing now, New Jersey has very little room to maneuver. Taxes are already maxed out. Raising them further risks driving out even more residents and businesses. Cutting public services, borrowing more money, or deferring infrastructure projects have become the only short-term solutions left on the table. But none of those are sustainable. According to recent reports from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, New Jersey ranks among the least financially prepared states to weather a serious downturn, right alongside Illinois and Louisiana. Decades of underfunded pensions, delayed maintenance, and borrowing to stay afloat have left the state dangerously exposed. Take Linda, for example, a 70-year-old widow living in a modest home in Morris County. "My property taxes this year were more than 2 months of my retirement income," she said. "All my children moved away to find affordable places to live. I'd leave too, but I can't afford to start over anywhere else." It's a devastating reality. In a state known for affluence, many older residents are trapped by the very system they helped build. The promise of New Jersey, safe neighborhoods, good schools, and economic opportunity now comes with a price tag too heavy for many to bear. The harsh truth is, wealth doesn't guarantee resilience. In fact, the more you spend to sustain an expensive lifestyle, the faster things unravel when the economy slows. And that's exactly where New Jersey stands in 2025. High costs, low reserves, and very little margin for error. If you live in New Jersey or have financial ties to the state, now is the time to plan smart, reevaluate your spending, look at your taxes, rethink your investments, and be ready to adapt quickly. Because in a place where everyone looks wealthy, it's easy to overlook how fragile the foundation really is. Don't let familiarity turn into financial risk. Stay informed and stay ahead. Hit subscribe so you're not caught off guard as this economic shift unfolds. Number 3. Illinois. Big in size but dangerously hollow beneath the surface. Illinois may still shine on the map, home to the towering skyline of Chicago and one of the largest state economies in the country. But under that impressive exterior lies a financial foundation that's been cracking for decades. This isn't a new development. Illinois has been struggling with deep-rooted fiscal issues for years, and in 2025, those problems are finally catching up fast. At the heart of the crisis is the state's ballooning pension obligation. Illinois holds a staggering $144 billion in unfunded pension debt, the highest of any state in the nation. And instead of funding progress, innovation, or community growth, a massive portion of each year's budget is tied up just paying for obligations from the past. What does that leave? Virtually nothing in the bank. According to the latest data from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Illinois ranks near the bottom in terms of recession readiness. While many states keep a financial cushion of 10 to 15% of their budgets, Illinois has barely scraped together 3%. And residents are feeling the squeeze on all fronts. Property taxes are some of the steepest in the country, income taxes remain high, and if you shop or dine out in Chicago, you'll pay some of the highest sales taxes in the U.S. It's pushing people out, literally. The state's population has been in steady decline, and as families and businesses relocate, revenue continues to shrink, making the hole even deeper. It's a downward spiral that's hard to break. David, a longtime homeowner in a Chicago suburb, shares the frustration. I'm shelling out almost $8,000 a year just in property taxes, he says. We love it here. This is home. But it's hard to love a place that drains your wallet every single month. That sentiment is spreading. Illinois, once a beacon of Midwestern promise, is now caught in a cycle of high taxes, low reserves, and mounting debt. The pressure is everywhere, from school budgets to infrastructure projects, and with so little flexibility left, there are fewer and fewer options on the table. If you live in Illinois, it's time to think critically about your finances. Those approaching retirement should review how stable their pensions really are. Investors need to factor in long-term risks like high taxation and fiscal instability before placing any serious bets here. Because right now, Illinois isn't just facing a recession. It's staring down a structural crisis that's been decades in the making, and there's no easy fix in sight. Make sure you stay informed. Sometimes, loving a place means knowing when it's time to protect yourself first. Number 2. Louisiana. Known for storms, oil rigs, and southern charm, but beneath that, Louisiana is quietly teetering on the edge. Locals often call it the state of storms and shells, a nod to both its constant battle with natural disasters and its deep dependence on the oil industry. But in 2025, that nickname feels less poetic and more prophetic. If you think Louisiana might somehow weather the next recession better than other states, think again. This isn't just about geography. Yes, hurricanes and floods are part of life here, but the real danger is economic. The state's financial foundation is already cracking, long before any national downturn fully arrives. On the surface, it looks strong. Ports bustling in New Orleans, offshore drilling platforms lighting up the Gulf. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find a budget stretched dangerously thin. Louisiana's rainy day fund, it's the smallest in the nation, practically non-existent, and its entire financial engine runs on a notoriously unstable fuel, oil and gas. Every time global oil prices dip, Louisiana's revenue nosedives, public programs get cut, infrastructure upgrades get shelved, and essential services hang by a thread. Other industries once helped prop up the state, tourism, agriculture, and shipping among them, but those sectors are now under intense pressure. Tourist numbers are dropping, global trade routes remain uncertain, and with consumers tightening their wallets, farms and local businesses are struggling to stay afloat. The infrastructure, aging and vulnerable. The levees, the highways, the water and power grids, many are decades past their prime. All it takes is one fiscal shock to send them into chaos. If you live in Louisiana, especially in low-lying coastal areas or oil-dependent towns, consider this a red flag. You're facing a two-front crisis, nature and the economy. Now is the time to reassess your finances, reevaluate your loans, think carefully before tying up your savings in vulnerable assets, especially property near the coast or anything dependent on oil. Start planning your backup strategy now, not later. And if you have friends or family living in Louisiana, share this message. One early heads up could help them avoid life-changing losses, because while the state may be known for surviving hurricanes, it's not ready for what's coming next. And coming up next, state number 1 may surprise you even more. Number 1, California. The Golden State is starting to tarnish, and for many, the American dream is slipping through their fingers. California used to stand as the pinnacle of success, a land where innovation thrived, opportunity bloomed, and the palm-lined streets of Hollywood promised prosperity and fame. But in 2025, it's become the most vulnerable state in America if a deep recession hits. No other state brings together so many critical risk factors, financial, social, and real estate into a single pressure point. Let's look at the numbers. A projected $55 billion budget deficit, unemployment at 5.5%, the highest among any large state, and over 239,000 residents packed up and left in 2024 alone. But the most staggering figure, $825,000. That's the median home price. To afford that, you'd need to earn around $237,000 a year. Yet the average household makes less than half of that. It's no longer just unaffordable, it's unlivable for the middle class. The result? More Californians are now rent-burdened, tax-stressed, and drowning in the cost of simply existing. Meanwhile, the once buzzing tech hubs and commercial centers are turning into ghost towns. Entire office towers in San Francisco and downtown Los Angeles sit eerily vacant. Their values are plunging, and behind the scenes, a commercial real estate debt bomb is ticking louder by the day. What was once marketed as the California dream is now a stress test for survival, especially for families and investors trying to hold on. And if you're not paying close attention, you could be the next to watch your finances unravel. California isn't just declining, it's leading the way toward a potential collapse, dragging communities, small businesses, and retirement savings with it. But here's the hard truth. Every economic downturn creates two types of people: those who ignore the warnings and suffer the fallout, and those who stay alert, adapt quickly, and position themselves for what comes next. So ask yourself, do you live in one of these high-risk states? Is your home, income, or investment future tied to a place on this list? If so, don't wait. Start gathering data. Review your financial exposure. Build a strategy, whether it's a pivot, a relocation, or an investment shift. Because sometimes one smart move made early is what separates those who survive from those who get swept away. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this with anyone living in or investing in these 10 critical states. Your awareness could be someone else's lifeline.